Suzanne, welcome to Diaspora Food Stories. How are you?
I am wonderful. I am good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. And I always love reconnecting with chefs and friends that, we've just interviewed years ago in Cuisine Noir. You and I reconnected not so long ago for your book to have a conversation with Book Lauder up in Washington. And so I'm excited to have this conversation on our platform just about your work and your life. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's like you said, it has been a while since we first were introduced to your work and my work, and it's nice to find myself back in your space, and
Yes.
it's really happy to be supporting and within your community.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to dig into your book, My Ackee Tree, later on into this episode. So we're going to start from the beginning because I just love for anyone who is familiar with Chef Suzanne, especially up in Toronto, one of, Canada's most respected chefs, reading the book really takes a deeper dive into your life, what you've gone through, your passion, what inspired you. So I'm excited to talk about that. But we're going to get started because you're in Florida now, but that's where your story starts, right? In Plantation, Florida. And you walk us through that about how saying the word and just everything. But then while your parents, moved, born and raised in Jamaica, Europe, Canada, and then Plantation, Florida. So take us there. Take us to Plantation, Florida, growing up.
Yeah, it's still it's still troublesome. I think even at this age of
Mm-hmm.
47, thinking about what it felt like to grow up here. I mean, I had my sister, I had my brother with me, my brother up to a certain age, but I think we always struggled with the fact that our family, um, our cousins, our aunts, our uncles were so far from us.
Mm-hmm.
My parents relocated to the United States in the 80s, with my dad having an opportunity for work that brought him down to Florida. And when we went down there, it was this hot city. It was warm. It was new opportunity. It was new growth for my dad, for my mom. But I think if anything, I would think my mom probably struggled the most because she had to leave her siblings. She had to leave her, her support. And that was, everyone that she grew up with, including her mom. And so for me and my sister, my brother, we just kind of, like any kid, when your parents are like, okay, we're moving, you kind of just like, okay, adventure. But I think the reality didn't hit us until when we were a little bit older and, you know, really thinking about growing up. We didn't have cousins around us regularly. We would see them every other summer, whether we went there or they came here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the wonderful bond about my family was that, even with that much time that passed and the distance that was between us, when we were together, it was as if we hadn't left each other. And it was like a time to catch up and to fill in the blanks and to fill in the stories that had happened to me and Tanya and Wayne. And, it was palm trees every day. It was always sunny, even in December. There wasn't any winters anymore. My memories of winters in Canada really faded. I moved to the United States when I was like 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't have much memories of the winter, whereas my sister and my brother had definitely more. But, it was a place of always feeling like I didn't belong and I knew I
Mm-hmm.
was going to leave. Um, when I graduated from high school, I ran out of Florida and raced to New York City. I was just anxious to explore who I was going to be. I wanted to
Right.
find my voice. I wanted to find out who, I was always kind of, you know, excited about, what was out there, what was beyond the state line of the state of Florida, what was beyond the district in the county in the city of Plantation. I knew
Right.
there was much more. I mean, we went to Miami and we definitely got a taste of that in Miami. And that was a regular. Miami was like, when I was 14, 15 years old going to Miami, that was like a normal thing. Most kids did that, or at least my friends did.
Mm-hmm.
And, my parents didn't always know, but, I think like any teenage, any preteen story, um, they can relate to just knowing that, you're driven by the fact that you know that you have a purpose, and you know that you have something that's inspiring you, that's sparking something in you that you can't even explain it. You can't understand. But
Right.
there was just something about getting to Miami, and then something. And then once Miami I got my fix in Miami, I was like, I have to get to New York. And New York was just exciting. It was music. It was hip hop. It was soul. It was, it was house music. It was techno. And music was always a deciding factor for me. Like music
Hmm.
drove me to wherever I needed to go next. And that was always
Right.
a great thing about, listening to my gut, as they say, really, really listening to my gut.
Wow. Now you say, being Jamaican, parents, being Jamaican, that was still, even though you were far away from family per se, they still brought that Jamaican culture into the home. And so you always had that piece of it seems.
Oh yeah, in our house, our my parents were, those Canadians, those Jamaicans, so that always had the party. Like our house was the party house. My mom was really into entertaining. My dad was into his records. We had a turntable. One of my dad's best friends was a DJ. So when my mom and dad decided to like have a party at the house, it was like our house was like ground zero. Our house was where everybody came. We had the speakers going. Our living room became the dance floor. Our kitchen became the waiting room. So it was, I think, having that music, whether it was Peter Tosh,
Mm.
to Bob Marley, to, just anybody that was, I'm trying to blank right now, but anybody that was, you know, inspiring to my parents musically, that was always in the backdrop. And then the menu at the table for guests coming in was always some type of rice and peas, jerk chicken, jerk pork. My dad would make, salt cod fritters. My
Mm.
mom would make her meatballs. There was always the flavor, the essence, the accent, the dominoes, clanking on the tabletop, on the marble top. There was always that part of us that always reminded us that we never would forget that we were Jamaican.
Wow.
We had the gatherings. It was blouse and skirt, and it was a proper, yardie house. Like
Hmm.
we never thought anything else. We never thought like, where are we from? Like, yeah, we're born in Canada, but we are straight up, we're Jamaican.
Now, music, really started young, like you said. I mean, I remember reading in the book that there was a music store that you and your sister loved to go to, but beg your mom to go and what, sit in the car until she took you guys?
Yeah, well, we had to ask her to sit in the car because you can't go in like this shop with your mom. So this was actually it was in, I think it was in Lauderhill. It was called Uncle Sam's, and there was Uncle Sam's in Broward, and then there was one in Miami. And so the one in Broward was the one that we used to go to. My sister and I would get dressed. We would like and this one, she was really into like hardcore alternative, and I was following whatever she did. And then when she was into techno electronic, I was into that. When she was into anything, I was into it. But then I found myself really getting into hip hop and really getting into reggae.
Mhm.
Finding that as like a deep connection to me and the friends that I had really made
Mhm.
in middle school and high school. But Uncle Sam was like, it was a haven. You can listen to records there. You were also able to like buy tickets to concerts. There was some signings of albums. So there would be like different musicians would stop in with their full band, and they would be signing records and
Wow.
t-shirts. And there's always a line to get in. You never knew who was in there, but you could hear the latest records that were just coming out. You can hear the latest CDs, and it was just such a good place. It was a place that we felt like we connected. We felt like
Mhm.
there is there's more out there.
Mhm.
We're stuck in Broward because this is where our parents are, but we're not stuck in here. We're not stuck here forever. because music is going to
Absolutely.
take us to wherever we want to go. Music is going to take us there.
Wow. And so speaking of that, when you went to New York working for MTV, was that whole how that sort of your probably your first thought of a career path was music, not food, huh?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a bit of music, and I guess how music fell into it was I studied photography and film. I went to art school. I dropped out of art school, but while I was still in art school, I really connected with a lot of people that were like shooting music videos. And I was so driven by music videos. And while I was in art school, we had a little radio station, and I had a little radio show where I was playing hip hop and house. It was called the Subi Styles Show, if anybody knows it. And you have a pre-recorded session. Please play it. Please send it to me, because I think the station was only played on campus at SVA, but I was just like, I swore everybody in New York heard my show, because I was like,
Wow.
yeah, Subi Styles Show. But so being in love with like music, and then seeing how music became music videos, and all these really talented directors were like creating like these awesome music videos, I was like, word, I want to do this. And then when an opportunity happened for me to get a job with MTV, it was like, this is like a match made in heaven. Music, television, videos, and I get to do it all. And so,
Wow.
yeah, that's how it landed me with MTV.
Okay. And then so that was definitely a journey, and definitely I won't give it away, just the journey that came along, and who you met, and just some life decisions made there. And then you're in New York, but then you find out mom has pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, that was a turning point for me. I think my mom was my best friend, as well as my sister, but we were really close. She used to write me letters when I was living in New York, and it just send me like bats of confidence, like, you're gonna be fine, and you're alone, but you're never alone. And like, when she had been complaining of the pain for over a year, and when we finally got the diagnosis, it was kind of like, someone punched me in my chest, and I was just like, what do you mean? Like, okay. And then it was almost like, okay, well, I guess we just got to do whatever we got to do. Like, it never dawned on me that she wouldn't be around. And 22 years later, I would be talking about her in this way to my son, like, she used to do this and she used to do that. But, I think for me, it was almost immediate. Like, I was like, okay, I'm packing my stuff up and I'm coming home.
Right.
And I went home, and I was her caretaker.
Right.
My dad was working. We had a family business, and it made sense. My sister, came as often as she could, which was a lot. And so we just kind of shared a lot of the responsibility with my mom, and taking her to her appointments, picking her up. And I think when she finally got cleared of her first round of chemo and radiation, and they said that she was, cancer free for now, we were like, okay, like, what do we do now? Like, you've got a second go at this. And it wasn't too far on that she went in for another test to check, and it had spread. And from there, we were considering alternative options for healing for her. And I think that's where we kind of, tried to really do whatever she wanted to do, and to support her for just getting through a lot of the pain that she was experiencing. So it was, it was a lot of time that I wish I could have asked a bit more questions about, like, who she was growing up, what was menopause, what does it feel like to be a mom? Like,
Right.
what is it like to be an adult? I was 23 at the time. I was 22 at the time.
Okay.
22, 23. And, I was just been running. I'd been running in New York. I'd been running in Georgia, in Atlanta. And now I was, home back in Plantation, where I thought I would never go back to.
Right.
And I was back home in my parents' house. And life, I felt like I was 13, 14, 15 again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want that again. But I also wanted my mom. And I
Right.
wanted to make sure that she knew that I could take care of her as she took care of me growing up as a kid.
Right.
And the
Right.
tables are now turned, and here I am for her. So
Right. And with the caregiving was sort of food was sort of, what are some of the best foods for her to have during this time. And I think that stayed with you along the way as you started your journey in food, as you went back to New York eventually. And then it was a fateful weekend
yeah.
that turned it all around. I think it was a weekend that was gifted to you. So let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, my best friend, who is still my best friend, there's a group of us that have been friends since my earliest memories of dancing in Miami at clubs. And we all met on the dance floor, and we still are friends, maybe not on the dance floor, but we are all
Okay.
still friends, and it's lovely. And so Amanda had gifted me a weekend up in the Catskills of New York City at an ashram. And it was a weekend that changed my whole life. It truly did. I had just turned 30. I was working at MTV. I was really exhausted, and I was really just at a crossroads with, like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
People were talking to me about, let's get her over to BET. Let's do that. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. Dave Chappelle's show was like killing it at Comedy Central. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
in that realm. And Viacom had just bought MTV Networks. And so it was all kind of becoming an umbrella. And I was like, well, this could be cool, but this just didn't feel like this was enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that weekend, you are being asked to do, simple duties within the ashram, like sweeping the floor,
And those
cleaning.
for those who are not familiar with what an ashram is, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it was called the Shivananda Ashram, and it was a Buddhist temple that they have spaces all over the world, and it's really rooted in connecting you spiritually on a Buddhist level, on a Buddhist, the theory of
Okay.
Buddhism, and how that was for me, was how it affected me, was I didn't know really what I was going into. But
Okay.
when you're at a stage in your life when you know something, you're seeking something.
Right.
I was seeking understanding. I was seeking openness, willingness. I was seeking just happiness. And the weekend to me was this opportunity to be open and go without knowing, but also go with knowing that it might lead me to someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where journeys do, that's the wonderful thing about journey or that sometimes we get to take a journey and not knowing where we're going to begin or end.
Right.
And that's the greatest part of the work that we put through, that we put in. And so this ashram was this temple that, invited guests. You paid your time to be there for the weekend. And within the weekend, there was an elder, that was an indigenous elder, that was brought to the ashram for the weekend to lead a sweat lodge. And a
Okay.
sweat lodge is basically, it's a ceremonial, an indigenous ceremony, where you are stripped down to like a bathing suit, or it just all depends. And there is one TP that is built that you are invited to go into, and you're sweating out anything from toxins
Mm.
to anything and everything.
Wow.
And so this elder, sat with us the night before and asked us all to meditate what we were looking to let go, what we were wanting to take from this experience, but also not to force it, but just to allow yourself to be open and willing. While you were at the ashram, you were asked to do simple duties, like I was saying, sweeping the grounds to mopping the floor. It was basically like keeping to yourself, being quiet. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
simple way of living, simple way of eating, simple way of just connecting with nature, connecting with your breath, connecting with yourself, connecting with even people.
Nice.
And after the ashram experience, the next day I was pretty much silent. I had an experience in the teepee that really opened me and opened my third eye in a way that was willing and ready to receive. And it took me into a place that I hadn't gone to, which was in the kitchen of the ashram.
Mm.
And in that kitchen, was the only place that you could speak, because the rest of the property, you weren't allowed to communicate. It was really just about you connecting with your particular role, what you were doing, your task. So my task in the kitchen was to help make family meal, or help to make a meal. And I learned about these lentils, and I learned how to make quinoa.
Wow.
And I learned, and I listened, and I disconnected, and I opened myself up to something that was very healing, something that I didn't really understand where it was going to lead me. But when I got back to New York City the next day, by the end of that week, I had signed up for a culinary school that was in Manhattan that focused on holistic diets and wellness, and using food to heal you. My whole sole purpose in becoming a chef was to heal through food, to use food to heal and understand. And that, to me, connected me to the moment that when I was in that sweat lodge, when I was in that teepee, and when I felt my mother holding my hand, and me connecting to something that I didn't know where was going to lead me, but that journey led me to this life.
Wow.
Because it's chef. And the moment that I could have never asked for anything more than just to be open and to be willing and to
I
trust.
love that. I love that. Wow. That's amazing. And it's just, I was just listening to something on YouTube, and it's like, life is just not this way. It is just here. And, I think the less we resist the twists and turns, the more we can just enjoy the journey and go where life takes us, because it's already going to be bumpy in certain places. But that is totally beautiful. And so from there, when did you, as you're pursuing culinary, you're going through culinary school, you're getting deeper into it. When did you decide to leave entertainment aside? And you know what? You are now Chef Suzanne.
It was scary. It was scary because, we want to do what's right, or what we think is the best for ourselves. And we don't want to disappoint our parents. And I'm someone that I've always been a people pleaser, in particular, someone that likes to please and to receive acknowledgement when I've done something well, and when I've done something right. And that acknowledgement coming from my father was really important to me as the last daughter, the last child in our family. So when I had to tell my dad, one, that I wanted to go to culinary school, and then he asked him to help pay for it, I was like, I don't know how responsible this. I had to say, okay, this really great, comfortable 401k, full benefits, this salary job that I've been at for almost 3 years, that I've got a promotion, not even a year into being there. I'm leaving all of that to go and become a chef. He was like, wait, what? And, I remember he called not the bursar, he called she was a placement officer or director at the culinary school. And he called her a couple times, and he was like, what is the reality that my daughter is going to actually get a job as a chef, that she can actually do this, and that they're going to hire her, and that she's going to find a job that's going to give her the same salary that she's been making. And the instructor said, there's no guarantee of anything.
Yep.
And she was really blunt with him, really honest. But she said, listen, all we can tell you is that if she loves, and she's as good as we know she is, she will she will grow and she will do endless things, and it will take her around the world and back. And that's exactly what this work has done for me. It has taken me
Absolutely.
around the world. And I don't think my dad ever expected me to do all the things that I have done when I left that very comfortable position at MTV and what it has opened up for me. I am
Wow.
so grateful for the experiences and the learning and the listening and the failures and the many, like, I don't think this is right, and I got to do it anyways, and I'm
Mhm.
tired. I'm too tired to keep going, but I'm going to do it anyways. All of those moments, all those self-doubts, all those moments of imposter syndrome that I
Mhm.
battle with, all of that to say that it's all worth it, because
Right.
to come back to remembering and to connecting with why I did this thing,
Right.
I wouldn't change it for anything.
And I was reading something again. I'm always looking at things, but you really can't regret your journey thus far, right? Because it's part of it. For one, it's part of your story, and it's part of getting it. It sort of is like it has to happen. It's just written in your life to happen. So woulda, coulda, shoulda. I would have done that. You know what? It worked out the way it should have worked out, and then we just keep going. So I think in some cases that is something that will be like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, or I want to erase certain parts in the past, right? Whether it was a job I had in the past or whatever. But you know what? Be appreciative of it. You learned from it, you grew from it, and move forward, and don't regret that it is a part of your story. So
Absolutely. I just was having a conversation with my nephew, about the fact that, like, he just got into the industry, into hospitality, and he's like, Auntie, I just don't know if I want to do this forever. I was like, you don't have to do anything forever, but
absolutely.
what you do want to remember is that every single thing that you decide to do in your life, every single thing is going to show up again in your life at some point. And you can bring that into play, and it has
Mhm.
value.
Right.
It's just up to you to connect and to bring it into play. But to know that you have that opportunity, and nothing is forever. Everything
Right.
is almost feels a bit temporary. And we're in it right now, but this is just a feeling in this moment.
Yep.
But trust, in a year or so, you won't even remember this exhaustion that you're feeling. You won't even remember that you questioned doing what you're doing, but you will remember the fact that you did something, and how it impacted you, and how it made you feel, and how it helped you grow into the man that you are.
Absolutely. So speaking of food taking you around the world, it took you to Europe where you met a man.
I
Fell in
did.
love. How was that time over there in Europe early in your career?
Yeah, it was, I decided to, after I had enrolled at the Natural Gourmet Institute, and I was still working full time at MTV while I was in school, because I was like, I gotta, like, work.
Hmm.
And, but when I graduated, when I was done, I had to select a location for my externship, and that I had decided to go to Hawaii, and then Hawaii had taken me on a whole journey. But then I decided after that time to go back to New York, and I started working as a private chef. Now, my skills as a chef were really honed in the restaurants, but my understanding of wellness really was at the Natural Gourmet.
Okay.
I had a desire to really kind of tighten up and understand a bit more about pastry, because I
Hmm.
loved pastry so much.
Hmm.
And so I had a client that I was working for that actually they invited me to live with them in France. And so we lived in Paris for 2 seasons, and which was basically, I lived there like 3 months out of the year for two
Okay.
years that I was with them. And it was great. It was really, really, really awesome. At the end of my last season with them, I had decided to go back, and I found a really, really small culinary school in the south of France called Gastronomicon, and they were accepting students from around the world, and they had two option programs. You can go and do pastry, partnered with wine training, or you could do culinary, partner with French language. They really kind of allowed you to get like an experience. They had 1 month to 6 months to 3 months to a year of training at this culinary program. And so I was like, well, realistically, let me just do a month. Let me just see what happens. So the day that I arrived, I was off. I'd taken a train in. I got off the train. I was walking up to the main office to go get something from my room that I was renting with 2 other flatmates. And I saw this dude like just standing off the side, and I was just like, oh, okay. You know how you see somebody at the corner of your eye, maybe like a little smile. And so then I went in and I came out and he was gone when I came back. And then I walked into the little community grocery store, and it was literally like a little movie. It was like I went down the aisle in my cart and he was coming. And,
Oh my
and I was like, okay, what are the chances?
Right.
And then I walked off to another lane, and then he walked in, and I was like, okay, you're either following me or something's up. But the next lane, he wasn't there. And then I was like, oh, he's gone. So got my stuff, paid for my stuff, left. And now I'm walking back to my flat. And there was a group of students that were standing outside drinking wine and having a good time. And they were like, hey, are you with the program? And I said, yeah. And they said, come over for a glass of wine. Welcome. It's your first day. And I said, yeah. So I went over, had a glass of wine, started talking. Some of the kids were from the US, some were from Canada, some were from Europe. And they were like, oh yeah, this is our mate Johnny's flat. He's here and da-da-da-da. And they were like, and I was like, oh, cool, okay. Maybe I'll meet him one day, cool. And so out the doorway comes Johnny, who had and that was the beginning. And
wow.
Yeah, that was the beginning of our story.
Wow.
And, we decided, after spending a week together, that he was going to work in a restaurant in Mougins, which is a little bit more south. And I was staying there. I still had a month to go. And so we just kept in contact for the time that he was still there before he left to go to cook in the restaurant. And then when I was done, he said, well, do you want to come with me to Nice? And I'm going to get a job in Antibes on a yacht, and we can just live in Nice. And I was like, I don't know you. Nobody knows you. When you just know, I kind of knew when I was just open. And I think my heart was just ready for love. My heart was ready to just be taken on a little bit of a flight. I was just like, why not?
Right.
I was going back to Miami to open a restaurant with my best friend.
Okay.
But I wasn't ready yet to do that. And I was like, let's do it. And so we did. And then it opened up, me falling in love with him and us falling in love. And then him coming back to the US, and then him eventually coming. And then us just being on our journey. And so it's 10 years in January, we've been married.
Congratulations. Now, when he came over, the plan was to go to Miami or go back to Florida and start, but you guys got stopped.
We did. We stayed in the US. So he is originally from Australia, but he originally got his visa to come to the United States and France. So with that visa, it only allowed him to be in the US for 3 months. So we knew that, but we just thought, because, we were so close to, the border in Canada, rather than going all the way back to France, why don't we just go to Canada, go see some of my family.
Right.
And then we'll go back. We had just, we just signed a lease on an apartment in Miami.
Wow.
We had just launched a catering company down there. And we were like, okay, dude, let's do this. Let's open up a restaurant. Let's do it up. Got to the border, got into Canada. He proposed to me in Canada at this little cute wine bar called Archive. And we were planning to go to New York to meet my sister for Halloween. And then 31st of October, we got to the border at like 6 in the morning, and the border officer said, "Can you pull your car over to the side?" And we were like, "Sure, okay." So we go over to the side. We had to go inside, and the officer was basically like, "You have two options. You can either, his visa is expired. You either fly back, you take him to JFK. He flies back to France to renew and get a new visa, or he got stamped in the country of Canada. You guys go back to Canada, and he's got 6 months in Canada."
Oh,
We're like, "Wait,
wow.
what? So we can't go back into the U.S.?" And he's like, "You come in, but he's got to be on a flight at midnight to go back to France. He cannot be in the
Wow.
United States." And it was like, what?
Wow. So you guys had to make a decision
We had
right
to
then
make
and
a
there.
decision. And mind you, like, yes, we were engaged. Yes, I had known him for maybe 5 months. I was like, what? Like, I'm not ready. Like, yes, we're going to get married, but I'm not ready to like just leave my life in the United States. Like I had, yes, Canada was home, but it hadn't been home in forever. So we made a decision, and we just we jumped over that broom and decided to stay in Canada. And we lived in Canada for 8 years and had our son there and had an amazing life in Canada. But it was the most difficult moment in my life.
I was going to say, let's get real for a minute, because I mean, here you are planning to, come here, you're going to take a little trip, see friends and family, you're going to come on back and start this life in Florida. And right there, you're told you got two options, that, either leave him or you stay here and start anew. And so, wow, what were you feeling? Were you pissed? Were you
I was
just like,
pissed. I was angry. I was crying. I felt really like lost. I didn't know how to make it. I didn't know what decision was the right decision to make. And I wanted someone just to tell me, like, go back to France, let him go back. You go to Florida, you guys figure it out. Go stay in Canada. Like, I just needed someone to tell me that it was okay to do whatever we were going to do, to call my mom and to say, "Mommy, what should I do?" My dad was just like, like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And, and I remember driving back in the car. We drove back to my brother's house in Toronto. And I remember driving, and we were silent. We both didn't speak. We didn't have a fight. We didn't have an argument. I think we were just both like, it got so real.
right?
Everything got real. Like we were like in this like little lovers bubble. Like, we had this great, cute little apartment that we were renting in Miami. We were now on a road trip. I had bought a car. Went like to Georgia, and then just that road trip up to Canada. It was just like,
Perfect.
and then we were like, wait, we really have to do this. Like, we really have to decide the rest of our life in this exact moment.
Right.
It makes me think a lot about people that have immigration as a real, issue in their life. And it's something that has always been a part of my life and my family, immigration, because we are not from this country. I was born in Canada, but my parents, getting to America or getting to Canada or getting to Europe, it was always a struggle. We were separated by family, by waters. And so this was my story, my whole family story. Here it is again, a constant reminder that you are not where you think you're supposed to be. And you have to decide now what's important. And you have this person that you love, but is it your love for him, or is it the love for the city that you were born in, or the country that you grew up in? And I think we made the best decision. I know we made the best decision to stay in Canada.